the Affordable Housing Trust for Thursday, May 16th, 2019 at 2 p.m. Don B. Griffin Room. First, on the public meeting, approval of the minutes.
I move the minutes be approved as published.
I'll second that.
Okay, Judith, second. We're all here, so I don't have to do a formal roll call vote, because we've had a remote participation. So all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. So on the minutes from the Cape Housing Roundtable, I think that was just 3 of us
Self-explanatory.
were at that. There was no deliberations or anything. We just participated in a tour. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from the Cape Roundtable of April
So
24th.
moved. As published.
And
Second by Brendan.
Brendan, you second that?
Second, yes.
And then 2 abstentions.
That's me.
All in favor? Aye. So
Aye.
3-0-2. Because you recused yourself too. You weren't at
Correct.
that one. On the Harwich Housing Forum, April 30th, 2019. I think there were 4 of us at that one. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes for the participation in the Housing Harwich Forum on
Move to
April
approve as
30th.
published.
I'll second that.
Barry and then Judith. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Dawn abstention.
I will say, we approved the minutes and they're accurate, but you know how I feel about minutes. You should be able to pick up minutes and recreate what happened, not just the vote, but what happened to lead up to the vote
Yeah.
And are we,
5 years later. And the minutes that we approved for our last regular meeting on March 21st do not adequately flesh out what we talked about with the golf people.
and is it possible to keep a library of these meetings?
The minutes?
The meetings, the video. Are
Yeah,
they're
I believe
being
Facebook.
recorded, right?
Caleb's back there. I believe that they are kept.
Yep.
I want to say in perpetuity, but perpetuity is a long
7 years or
time.
whatever.
Facebook?
They're available on
YouTube?
social media and they're on YouTube as well.
Okay.
YouTube as well. Thank you. Okay. So in the 21st minutes, did you have material that you wanted to, we can always amend them at a later date if you want to
It's
add.
okay,
But
and
you-
what they said is
duly noted
fine, I just
for-
don't believe in addition by deletion. What we got here, I asked for them to come in specifically because I didn't want them to think that there was a run on their land.
Right.
And that even if they had any, this may wind up in these minutes, even if they had any misgivings about that they had a commitment on the Board of Selectmen's part to make sure that they had a first-class golf course, so nothing was going to happen that would be negative to them. Us using this property was not going to be, should not be perceived as they're losing something for us to get something.
Right.
That's not here. Because it could conceivably happen later on that they complain that we didn't give them a full opportunity, or that they didn't know. I just want them to know, A, they knew, B, we actually affirmatively told them we would support their operation, that it was not like a mutually exclusive thought.
Yeah, that we were collaboratively with them.
Okay, but
Should we amend the? or we've
it's
already
okay.
amended?
It's in this minutes.
I
I know
think-
that because I
So
just
we'll
said it.
have it in the discussion for this minutes, that there was a more extensive discussion about the minutes on the 21st,
And just
reflecting those
as a
notes.
general thought, my belief is that these are historical documents. In 5 years, I should pick it up and say, wow, they said that?
Okay.
Then I think if we look at what's happening at golf courses around the country, I think 2,200 of them closed last year. And the Captain's Golf Course, about 5 years ago, they put another 36 holes in. They hardly ever fill it.
Oh, you're right, and I actually had said to these folks, you should concentrate on the operation you do have, because any ideas of, there's a dwindling golf population, and any ideas
Right.
that you have of expanding the golf course, you may want to consider just making the one you got really first class.
Okay.
Yep.
duly
along
noted.
with having young kids play, because you're eating the goose that laid
They
the
are
golden
doing
egg.
that. They're actively recruiting at the high school and,
Yeah,
I-
but you,
I agree with you.
yeah,
But that was the purpose of the conversation, is that there's a dwindling population for this. Don't think that the whole of Oak Street is
they
really
all
yours.
look like us.
And by the
Old
way,
white men.
We're getting a little bit off,
and by the way,
off topic.
this is not off topic. They did actually discuss their misgivings about how the entrance to any built affordable housing might look and how that might impact the gateway to their
To
operation.
their operation.
That was a real concern of theirs.
Okay.
And having said that, you never get the second chance to make a good first impression.
Oh, yeah.
And anything that was put in at the entrance would be, to my way of thinking, would have to be spectacular. Not like, they've managed to stumble into the cart barn. They still haven't got it done. So don't use themselves as an example.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is absolutely correct, and that was the point. We got site plan review, worry about your own operation, and we'll take care of making sure that this doesn't look like a hovel of some sort. This is,
Yeah.
it's gonna be
A house for the
art was
hobbit.
there. I mean, the look of this is going to be gone over by all the regulatory boards. It's not like a mechanism to make sure that we're inferring something bad onto the golf course. That whole discussion occurred.
Okay, fair enough. So under public comment and announcements, we have one member of the public. I don't know, did you have anything you wanted to comment on, Art?
No.
Thank you for your attendance. Next item on the agenda is discussion with Paul Lag, the town planner in Eastham, regarding the experience with the affordable housing development there. I would just say for the record that I did have a chance to go over and visit. I was just kind of curious, and we have the materials that will be on, or maybe we can have them incorporated as part of the meeting minutes, maybe not meeting minutes, but at least available to board members for the background. And I'd like to turn it over to Paul to do a presentation on what your experience was like and how your experience worked out in Eastham.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. I said I'm the town planner in Eastham. I'm the liaison to Eastham's Affordable Housing Trust, and I also live in Harwich, so I'm glad to see action happening by this trust and some infusion of activity. So as Chris mentioned, we did meet last week, and along with Linda and Andrea, and I just kind of gave them an overview of our project. It's usually referred to as the Purcell development because that was the name of the property, and the town purchased the property almost. Sorry. The town did purchase the property almost 20 years ago, and it just sat vacant for a long time. But the official name of the development now is the Village at Nauset Green. Does this work? No. Let's go this way. Or not.
Technology.
Are you in the presentation right now? It looks like you're on your desktop.
I thought I was, but.
There you go.
All right. This is an overview, and I have some boards too. You're welcome to take a closer look after. This is the site. This is Brackett Road here, and out here is the intersection. Route 6 runs here, just off the page, and this is the Brackett Road Route 6 intersection. So it's about 10.5 acres, and the site was really developed around the concept of 2 village greens. So the roadway comes in off of Brackett Road. There will be a little pocket park which is will be usable to the public. So the roadway comes in, and then it kind of slopes. It's kind of contoured a little bit down here. So there's 2 greens and a townhouse style apartments that line their way down here. So it's a nice setup. A major part of the design was to kind of keep as much of the natural. It's all vacant, wooded. It's cleared now, but to keep as much of this buffer as possible, just to create a natural buffer to the property. But it's 65 units. They're all rentals. 110 bedrooms. 105 parking spaces on 10.5 acres, and there's an on-site wastewater treatment facility, which is located down in the back corner of the development down here. And again, this little pocket park, and part of that will be an RTA bus stop, and there's going to be a bike racks and things here. I should mention the Cape Cod Rail Trail is just a little ways down the road. It runs off here. So, and this is really, everyone's familiar with Eastham. This is right in our North Eastham kind of main commercial center. So we've gone through a lot, just as a quick aside, we've gone through a lot of rezoning lately, and the whole thrust was to try to get our North Eastham area, as it redevelops, to get more of a village, a village style sense to it, and encourage more pedestrian bike activity. So that was great because, we're hoping that we'll have, sort of a captive audience right here of residents who will be able to get to the bike trail, walk across the street, get to the stores, and so on. So that's just an overview of the site, and I have some more graphics also. So I just was going to give kind of an overview of the RFP process. I don't know how familiar everyone is with it, or if you've gone through similar, but I'll just kind of go through. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think we're a newer agency, so taking your time to kind of explain it would be good.
Yeah. And feel free to just jump in, any questions or anything. So this whole, as I said, the town purchased this property almost 20 years ago, and it just kind of sat there, no action on it. A big issue with the lack of any action was Eastham didn't have any water. We didn't have any town water until just recently. And so that was always a hindrance as far as what you could do, putting a wastewater treatment facility on the site, the number of bedrooms it could support. And so that in combination with, I just think the town just really wasn't ready to tackle a big project. And so it did kind of sit fallow for a number of years. Once the water mains were installed and available in this area, then it kind of changed the equation, and people said, we need to start to get going on this. And it did change the view, at least from the Board of Selectmen, on what could work there as far as number of bedrooms. There was an earlier RFP before my time that was really limited, small scale, and this really had no offers on it at this point. So we redid the RFP process. This time around, it went through the Board of Selectmen, facilitated through the Board of Selectmen, and we put the RFP together, and just kind of the general items that we were looking for. We wanted someone to construct it and be able to handle the ongoing management of the facility. There was a max that they put on 132 bedrooms, and the RFP did have language that was favorability for designs accommodating seniors, just given our demographics, and most towns around here are demographics, but we didn't want to restrict it to seniors, but just understanding issues of aging in place, mobility issues. We wanted to have good design that could accommodate that population. It's a town-owned property, and so we were offering and have offered it as a 99-year lease to the developer from the town. And we also had language in there that talked about town subsidy towards some of the infrastructure. So that was all baked into the RFP up front. What we were looking for unit configurations was a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, but we really specified, we wanted at least 40% of the units to be 2 bedrooms. Again, given our demographics, seemed to make sense. We did have language that was favorable to townhouse designs were preferable. We wanted it to be, the selectmen really weren't interested in an apartment building per se. We wanted something that had more of a village feel, and a big part of that was, it wasn't specified in the RFP, but what ended up having, the site that we have now, they designed it so really everyone has a front door to their townhouse, and everyone's fronting on the street. And it's a small detail kind of, but it makes a big difference as far as creating a neighborhood feel, and just knowing that you see people coming and going. You're not going into in a lobby and up an elevator and scurrying into your apartment. I think that was a lot of the mentality behind that. And again, in the RFP, we specified for affordability. We had these percentages here. We did open it up to allow units up to 120% and AMI is area median income. One of the needs in Eastham, and I think pretty much every town is in the same boat, but we have folks that are priced out of the market, and they make too much money. They don't qualify for any of the lower subsidy rates, but they're priced out of the market rate units. And so that's what the thinking was, allowing that up to 120% to get the, what's called, the community workforce housing. So folks that, they may have a great job, they make decent money, but they're still just priced out of the market rate units, just given the nature of the market here. So, and that, I think, goes a long way to, I like that we built that in there, because that goes a long way to kind of fostering a real neighborhood, an organic neighborhood that has, a lot good cross-section of income levels. We didn't want this to be just, the low-income development. We wanted to be, as to the extent we could, an organic neighborhood, just like you would have in other areas. So that was the theory behind the affordability breakdown and including up to 120%. So we ended up having, despite all of this, we only got 2 proposals. And we had a vetting process through the Board of Selectmen, myself, the town administrator, and our housing coordinator. And we ended up, and probably the green is very light on here, but we ended up going with the company Penrose Properties was selected to develop the site. And I'll get more into the specifics on the site in a minute, but once they were selected, kind of the ball starts rolling. The first thing that we did was to work out between the selectmen and the developer Penrose a memorandum of agreement, and this kind of laid the groundwork for, this kind of set the parameters for what set the expectations, I should say. We had the RFP, they came in, they were able to meet that, but then we kind of get down to a little bit finer grain about the details. And so this MOA, I gave a copy to Chris, and you're free to get copies of it, but it had things in there, like this is where we had the agreement that the town agreed to waive 50% of the building fees to help accommodate the financing for this. We ended up agreeing to $400,000. That was the town subsidy mentioned in the RFP, and that was set aside for water infrastructure. It made sense for us because we were in the midst of putting the water mains in right in this area, so we just said, let's just keep rolling with that. We'll just put the pipes in, the town will cover the costs. We already had the financing worked out, and it lined up perfectly with our construction schedule for the water. Another stipulation was that we didn't want this to have any direct access onto Route 6. That's a huge issue in Eastham. Everything, as you can imagine, everything revolves around Route 6, so we're trying to really limit and eliminate curb cuts, consolidate curb cuts. We just didn't want to create another one. So that was as you see, that was incorporated in the design. Everything comes off of Route 6. And then this MOA had a number of points in it, just kind of basic requirements for what the town wanted to see. As I said, requirement to hook up to town water. We had some restrictions on the building height. We put it at the town has a 30-foot building height restriction. We allowed a little bit extra, but we wanted it no more than 3 stories for the townhouse. We wanted to make sure we had a utility right-of-way, a 40-foot easement on the new roadway that would go in there, and that we'd be able to access that. And then there was a number of just site amenities. We wanted to have, playground. We wanted to have some sort of garden, community garden, the bus stop I mentioned, and then a lot of stuff on just making sure security was in coordination with the police. And there was kind of little things like washer and dryers. We just want to make sure that as they're developing this, we wanted to have washer and dryers facilities on the site, whether in the units or somewhere on site, just because that's important for everyday life. We didn't want to have this whole unit and then people trudging off to the laundromat. So it's important to put those little things in there, because as things go on, these developments, for as great as the developers are at doing this, they are kind of on a shoestring, and it comes down to the financing. It comes down to the wire on the financing, and it's dependent on a lot of factors that are outside of the town's control or developers. So that's why building these things in up front, like kind of, because that could be easily one of the, we can't afford to do the washer dryer thing. Well, it saves money on the budget sheet, but in the end, when people are living there, it's a major thing. So it seems ticky-tacky, some of these things, but I think it's important to have them in there. And at least it forces them to come back to the table. They just don't cut it in some budget meeting and then the town doesn't know about it. If they're gonna cut it, it's in this MOA, they have to come back and explain what it is, and at least we have a say in it, so.
To that point, these are rentals, right?
Yes, yeah, all rentals.
And you're asking, it could be conceivably into an aggregated area that they all share. And it's an appurtenance. So, I mean, it's basically your responsibility as the owner of the shell of the building then to make sure that for replacements, are they gonna be coin operated or what?
Well, all the management responsibility is on the developer. So the
So he
town
could
is
literally
really-
make it a pay for wash?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I don't know. On ours, they're in the units. They were
In the
able to
units,
get them
I
in the
think.
units.
Which leads me to my other comment. Normally on an agenda, we'd all get the same information as apparently you got. But I'd like to see if we could get this, it's hard to see this. I'd like to see if we could get the PowerPoint
Oh, I'd be happy to.
and the copy from you guys of the MOU so that it's in the record for the trust, not just in your office.
Yeah, no, I went out just to meet to see whether it was worthwhile to go through and have a presentation, so.
Oh, I get that,
We
but the
have all the material.
presentation is being done
Yep.
without any backup.
Yep.
That none of us in the packet, we've got the Town of Grafton Housing Trust Action Plan, but we don't have this. And this is what we're discussing. So just as
Yep.
a routine, I'd like to be able, it's not you, it's just in general, as a routine, whatever we're going to be discussing, if there is data to be presented, I'd like it to be in our packet so that we can get a chance to look at it and do some actual meaningful reading.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll,
We'll definitely do
I'll
a
schedule
follow-up
that.
to this.
No, but he's just saying in advance, Chris.
Yeah.
And if stuff like this
This is
can
a
be,
from here on in thought.
yeah, some days in advance too, just because
Yeah, of
it's
course, it's easy.
hard to get it all.
So, again, this was all part of the MOA agreement with the selectmen. Just the other thing, peer review fees, that becomes important later on in the process. And again, just upfront, getting it in writing that the developer's on the hook to provide all of this to us. So that was the first part, RFP award, the memorandum of agreement. And at that
Did
point.
you wind up using the peer review process in this development?
Well, the peer review, we did have peer review
You did have
once we
some-
got into the permitting phase, which is really, at the next point, at that point, the developers, they're working with their team, their architects and their engineers, they're getting the site plan together, fleshing out the site plan based on what the RFP was. And the next thing is you really get into the regulatory comprehensive permitting. That process, you might have heard the term friendly 40B. It's usually, when they use that term when the town is involved, whether they're the property owner or it's in a partnership. And, basically it implies that, the town there's tacit approval of the town and the community that this is a good project and it's not adversarial. And so starting off with a town piece of property and then responding to a selectman RFP, the process did get off to a good start, but at this point, everything kind of rolls with the Zoning Board of Appeals. They're the sole permitting granting authority. They basically, and that's why they call it this comprehensive permit process, because basically all of the authority that would normally go for a site plan review to disperse them on the local boards, it's all consolidated under the umbrella of the Zoning Board. Different towns do it. They have different approaches, but what we did was everything was facilitated through the zoning board, but we really did try to reach out to the other boards, and the zoning board wanted this to happen, that we tried to treat it as another, a regular process, and so they really invited the planning board and the Board of Health, the other local boards that were pertinent to review the process, and the developers were really good about accommodating that, and they came to the planning board meeting. There's not technically any requirement to do that, it just goes to the ZBA, but we had a separate hearing with the planning board, they went to the Board of Health, the Housing Trust weighed in, and again, this is I just like this process. It ensures a thorough vetting. Sometimes even though it's the town project and we're facilitating, it's all going smoothly, but I think it's still very important for town projects, whatever they are, to go through the normal review, from planning board and so forth. And they did catch a few things that, suggestions on the site, the layout, the parking spaces that came up through the planning board that, things zoning board doesn't think about. So it was a good process. So again, ZBA kind of controls the whole show at this point, except for DEP state approvals are required for the treatment facility. So there's no direct Board of Health approvals necessary, but again, they did go to the board to keep them apprised of the plans and just to get any input that they might have concerns. So the peer review process, we had the developer, as part of the agreement, they put funds in an escrow account that the town could access through the zoning board. And we did have the engineering, the wastewater, and the traffic studies were all a requirement of the process, and we did have them peer reviewed by a third party. Again, it's just, I think it's best practices, it's due diligence to make sure, even though it's a town project and everything seems great, I'm just a big believer in not the town should play by the same rules as you would if it was a private development. So there were no real issues with the peer review, a few tweaks here and there, but generally the plans were good. And the whole process through the zoning board went very smoothly. We actually had two 40Bs going at the same time, so just from my perspective, it was kind of turned into a little bit of a Hollywood production on my end, because keeping two sets of the 40Bs, two sets of peer reviews, two sets of consultants, so it was interesting on my part, but overall the process went pretty smoothly. I say that because the comp permits, these are major developments and there are a lot of moving parts, and these projects can get slogged down a little bit. Sometimes not anyone's fault, it's just they're big projects and they're complicated, and there's new infrastructure, there's wastewater treatment, there's architecture, there's everything, so.
To make life easy for you, Paul, did you have like an operational committee that would meet 3 or 4 people that met and you do it all at once?
No,
Okay.
because everything really goes through the zoning board, so we just facilitated it through that. I mean, I had my colleagues on the staff side. I should mention, prior to getting to the zoning board, the developer was coming in. We had a lot of preliminary meetings on the staff level to go through the engineering and the layout and fire department and access and all that stuff. So there was a lot of work before they even got to the zoning board stage on that. And again, I think that went a long way to making sure that when you actually get to the hearing process itself from start to finish was relatively quick. But I think that was because a lot of work went
It's all worked out by the time you get there.
Yeah, and again, I include that with the planning board review, and so the informal reviews from the other boards, so. But it's, like everything else, it's just doing the homework and laying the groundwork, so when you actually get to the hearing, kind of the questions are already answered kind of approach, and you just kind of go through it. So again, I won't try to keep things moving, but I'm happy to answer any questions on the comprehensive permit status. Again, I guess the takeaway, the zoning board is really in the driver's seat, so even though this was a town project, the selectmen were kind of driving the bus on the RFP. Once it gets to the comprehensive permit, the zoning board is in control, and they have really complete discretion to, control this. But
And just the timeline, approximately how long did it take from when you did the RFP to when the regulatory?
I have a slide on that.
You have a slide,
Yeah.
sorry.
So where we ended up, this is kind of just the final design numbers. So from the RFP to what actually got approved, we ended up with, you can't read that first point, but it's 65 units. There's 18 buildings. That includes the residential buildings. There's a community building that will be used for the management office and some limited storage. There's a meeting room in there, and there's the wastewater treatment building itself. And the breakdown was, we ended up at 27 one-bedrooms, 31 two-bedrooms, 7 three-bedroom units, and then the other 2 buildings. The affordability mix ended up being, as you can see there, it ended up being in line with the RFP. Some of this stuff gets adjusted during the course of the project, but those are the final numbers, so we were kinda on target with what we wanted. And the local preference, that's the other thing that gets involved, is the local preference is the amount of units that would be reserved for Eastham residents to get first crack at it, to serve the local needs. So once this is, once the project is completed and they start the rent up of it, you know, they'll have a lottery, and there's a whole vetting process that happens for income eligibility and so forth. And so this was another important piece. From the beginning, the town, you know, pushed for the maximum local preference possible, which is 70%, and that's for basically Eastham residents, employees of the town, and employees of the school district, so the Nauset School District. Ultimately, DHCD at the state level is in control of what that percentage is, but again, it's important, I think, from the town's perspective, to just push for it. You know, so we had a lot of the 70%, we want the max, and we kept pushing for it. At the end of the day, it worked out that we got 65% of our local preference, and 10% goes to Barnstable County residents, and basically after that, it's opened up to everyone. The way it works is this is only on the initial lottery for the initial rent-up. So in a sense, this kind of worked out better because Eastham residents have 2 cracks at it. They get the initial lottery at the 65, but obviously they're also Barnstable County residents, so they can throw their hat in the ring twice before it's opened up broadly. The reason for the 10% and the adjustment, we didn't get the 70, was because the funding, I got a slide on the funding, but the towns of Orleans and Wellfleet, through their CPAs, contributed $100,000 each to this. And so that really to justify this being a regional development, and to kind of acknowledge that contribution, they made the adjustment to just open it up a little bit. So, but again, DHCD is ultimately in control of it. They may look at it and say, you know, based on the demographics, the regional need, you know, we're only going to do 50% or 40, whatever. So it's case by case. But I think we did well with the 65-10 split. I should say the affordability mix ultimately is also in control of the DHCD. At the end of everything, they go through and say, we need to adjust this, even though this is what the developer wanted to do initially. So again, just some things are out of the local control. So just kind of a summary on the funding. The total project's $23 million. There was $750,000 from split up into 2 awards over 2 different town meetings from our local CPA. We had the $400,000 from the subsidy, and the Housing Trust itself contributed $300,000, and then we had the Orleans Wellfleet CPA, and then the bulk of the funding comes through the state through these low-income housing tax credits and some funding through mass housing and so forth. And then I just put other financing because this part is, I'm out of my depth on this part. I'm not directly involved in the financing, so, you know, it's cobbled together through, you know, through, like I said, other financing. But I will say you need to pay for what you get and for what you want. And in this project, it was really important that, well, I should just want to finish up here. The project timeline, again, this came up. The RFP was issued in May 2016. The comp permit was initiated in December of 2016. And so it was a few months. March 2017, the comp permit was issued by the ZBA. And then we had our groundbreaking December 2018. And we're looking to get the first round of occupancy this fall, 2019. So it takes a little bit. This is, I would say, I think this has gone pretty quickly, but it does, you know, it's a couple of years, 3 years before it actually, you know.
Timing in terms of the comprehensive permit issued to the groundbreaking, some of that was probably tied up with the financing, that they had to organize their financing?
Yeah, so, and again, I'm not, you know, the developers are taking care of, you know, that's their role. on the town level, we're involved, but, you know, I can't speak too in-depth on it, but I will say the financing is very competitive. These low-income housing tax credits are kind of the key
Yeah.
element to securing the finance. They're very, very competitive, and it's, you know, it's real touch and go with, you know, the debt. There's a lot of jockeying for position, all these different projects spread out all throughout the state for limited funds. So these developers are all constantly jockeying for position, trying to, you know, get all their ducks lined up, and, you know, the funding is, you know, it can be dicey. So it's really touch and go up until the 11th hour with, you know, did we actually get the credits? Is this going to come through? Did we, you know, did the financing line up the way it did in the original pro forma? Do they have to make adjustments? So, and that, I wanted to mention, that was part of the reason why this $300,000 from the Housing Trust was not originally planned for. This was kind of a last-minute situation that arose. There was some changes in the budgeting. Part of it came through what we ended up getting, I think, through the low-income housing tax credit. And some of it was changes that we had to make to the wastewater treatment facility, things that DEP wanted some adjustments to, and it kind of threw the budget out of whack. But again, it came down, this is why they came back and said, we got to make the numbers work. They want, you know, you got to cut somewhere and make adjustments. So that's why it's important to get some of those, you know, things in that MOA up front, just so that it doesn't get cut in some meeting somewhere that you're not privy to. But we ended up having, working out with the Housing Trust, had funds available through one of their programs that is intended, we have funds that's intended to, for new housing units, so it did technically fit under the trust's own program guidelines, and so they were able to contribute this large funding amount. And but again, it's just these things come up. This was really like in the final days as the funding was coming together, the closings were supposed to happen, and we needed to fill this gap. So it's just important to realize these things, even the best oiled machine, you know, things happen. They're out of control of the developers or the town. You had a question, please?
If you were to superimpose on this, Paul, and added to your timeline, having to go back to the town meeting every time you needed a change, you'd be doubling or tripling the time, wouldn't you? I mean,
Oh, you mean as far as
you'd be
not
lucky to
having
be into groundbreaking now.
not having the trust available?
Correct.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt.
Good.
Just while you have these boards, I didn't see the boards on the presentation. Do you want to
Yeah,
just
I'll show you.
speak to
I don't
those,
have
or-
them all, but I do have. I just want to show you a couple of. Oh, and again, just kind of takeaways. I wanted to mention, for our project, it was really, really important that we had something that looked appropriate for Eastham, that matched the character of the community, and the townhouse design. It is more expensive to do rather than doing, you know, a traditional apartment-style building. And so that's why I mentioned, you know, you got to pay for what you want, and that's kind of where it led to these CPA requests and the Housing Trust. You know, we wanted a townhouse design. We didn't want apartment buildings, and it's just the nature of the construction that requires that. So the townhouse design, I think we just got a lot of good reception. There really wasn't any negative public feedback to the design. I think it was just that folks, the public liked what they saw. It was well designed. It looked like it fit. You know, it's definitely different. We don't have anything else like it in Eastham, but I think to the greatest extent we could with a major development like this, it's something that would fit in with the community. And I think that went a long way to getting support for, you know, we did have to go to 2 town meetings for 2 separate CPA allocations, and there really wasn't any blowback to that. So again, it's just kind of putting it in up front, the work, like what's going to work, what's going to get public support, and it kind of, for good or ill, it comes down to what is this thing going to look like. And I mentioned, you know, it kind of sounds silly. In some respects, it's style over substance. In certain respects, it's like that's what it comes. If you want to, is this going to look like it fits in with Eastham or Harwich when I drive by this thing? You know, and it's like. And for good or ill, that's what it comes down to. So sometimes you just got to put that up front. Just say, let's get a good design, something we can take out to the public that is gonna be acceptable, and everything kind of flows from that. They say, you know, they're comfortable with it, and I think we'll have an easier time justifying spending the money at town meeting or through CPA or the trust for that matter. So again, I kind of mentioned this, just there's a lot of, once you find a developer, there's a lot of twists and turns, things come down to the last minute. I'm a big one for just getting everything lined up. I don't like surprises. I like to get into the hearing and have everything nice and orderly and everything, but sometimes you just get into the stuff and it's like we don't always have the answers. Or, you know, information's pending. We don't know if we can commit to this because we don't know if we've heard back from the state. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind. Again, outreach to the board and the committees and to the public. We just had a really good time with inviting the local boards into it and just making sure they felt part of the process. And it was helpful. It wasn't just lip service to them. They made some good points and improved the project. And again, I can't see, some of this colored stuff's not showing up, but just outreach to the abutters. So when you have a site picked, you know, that's critical. Just make sure the abutters are comfortable. Kind of allay some of those NIMBY concerns that always do crop up. We had a few folks that were concerned. This site is not surrounded really by residential, but we did have some folks that were concerned. But once they saw the development, they got comfortable with it. And I think that, again, that goes to the design. And again, just when you get kind of nuts and bolts thing, but you know, when you're at the stage where, you know, you're under construction, which is where we are in our project currently, having funds set aside and agreed to that the developer is going to provide to help the staff time, the plan review, the inspections, these are, you know, major projects, and they do cut into, you know, we're a small department. We only have one full-time building commissioner, and he's the inspector. So that was really key for us to make sure, like, we could have funds set aside so we can bring on added inspectors and do outside plan review, just stuff that, you know, we wouldn't be able to handle in-house. So that gets baked into the MOA. It also gets baked into conditions of the comprehensive permit that they're to supply these funds. So that's to me, that's actually really key, because that'll bog down the process too. Once you start construction, you want this stuff moving along. If they're waiting on inspections because there's only one guy who can get there, you know, 2 times a week, it's not going to work. So
Before you,
sure.
because I'm actually picking up questions as I go along here. I feel compelled to say something because this is taped, and this is not just form over substance. Arguably, if you've read any studies on this, there's a higher safety component for single-door entry than there is for common entryways. Most of the crime that happens is between the door and the actual apartments.
Yeah.
And HUD itself was moving away from that as a paradigm. Second of all, who manages this?
So Penrose Properties is managing it. They have their own wing of their company that does the management.
And that's done by a renewable contract, or they own the project?
They own it.
They own
So and from what I understand, they kind of they take different approaches. So they will reach out to, if there's a local agency or company that can do it, they'll reach out to them to see if, you know, just in terms of having someone local. But if that doesn't work out or there's nothing available to handle it, they have their own part of the company come in and manage it. And that's what's going to happen here. So there will be, you know, 24/7 access to a manager. That was part of the stipulation of the MOA. We wanted to make sure, like.
But there's no nexus between the town and the manager?
No, the town is really hands-off on the we're not going to manage it. We're responsible for the roadway, plowing the roadway. That's pretty much it.
It's very similar to the Yarmouth project we did the tour on.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a leasing agent on site. They didn't say much about a property
Yeah, the
management
maintenance, I don't
division,
think they
maintenance. I think
answered
it's gonna be sourced, you know,
I think that it's a
I think it was leasing, but they're gonna have, it's gonna be just subbed out to somebody. They're gonna be managing exactly what you're doing.
And to
Does
to
the-
that point, I'm glad to
Yeah.
be able to follow somebody else's taillights, because
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm
to
suspicious
reinvent the
about how this
wheel.
may all work.
And the town, I would imagine, has some say over if they do sub it out, who they sub it out to?
No,
No,
That's why I'm.
no.
That's a challenge.
Yeah.
Could be a
Uh,
challenge.
and the
That
town
was-
could, in that scenario, the town contributed, is it $30,000 per unit?
30,000 per unit in the Yarmouth
2.1
Mall.
million to get the 69 units.
Right.
So that was their contribution, and the land
And after it's up and running, they want nothing to do with it.
you gave a 99-year lease, they're gonna manage it, and then you
Yeah,
get
no, I remember
We
it
need to
was.
consider.
132 units.
You don't really, a town the size of Yarmouth or Harwich really doesn't want to get into a property management division. It's just,
No, but there are ratings for management companies, and we went through this when we were looking at housing for the old middle school, and that was one of the concerns from the public that showed up about who the management company would be, and is there some oversight that the town?
I didn't raise it to resolve it, I raised
sure,
it because
yeah.
it's something that we need to consider when we start
Consider,
doing
exactly.
stuff.
so we wanted
I
that
should-
the second time around in the middle school housing committee, and
I should mention that part of the vetting through the zoning board was, the Penrose, they did supply their operational plan, their management plan
Yeah.
of how they do it, so, and it is fairly detailed, so it talks about.
But the flip side of that is that none of the people in that meeting, whether they were on that side of the table or this side of the table, are gonna be here in 20 years.
Well, that's true.
Yep.
too.
Just the, so the
with the Board of
99,
Selectmen.
the 99-year lease has
Exactly,
the
I believe in
ability
process.
for the construction to occur without Davis-Bacon or without prevailing wage, because it
Yes.
technically is a private development.
Yeah,
Right.
and that actually, there was, because at one point, we were trying to utilize some other funds on the town side that we couldn't because they had to do with CDBG, and it would have triggered Davis-Bacon, and it would have kind of, but yeah, you're right.
So once it goes to the developer and to be ultimately leased out, they simply provide, Davis Bacon's not involved.
Not involved.
Good.
Because of
It's
the
at an arm's length.
99-year lease, that it won't revert back to the town in a timely fashion is, I think.
No, I get that,
rationale.
the arm's length is there, but there's good news with that and bad
Yeah.
news, that's why I brought it up. And finally, we're actually trivializing something I know to be a problem, at least here. The timeline was not affected by financing with that Hesh Habitat project. It was the ZBA
Right.
that protracted that to over 6 months. We need to schedule an agenda item that has them coming in front of us, not to affect a particular project, but their real job in their minds is worrying about whether somebody's contour of the property is prohibiting them from doing something that they really want to. And this was a quote from one of their members, that it seems here like you're trying to go around our zoning laws by doing this to get something you wouldn't deserve otherwise. And I'm sitting in the back going, yeah, that's 40B.
Yep.
But they are not well versed on their part of this. They happen to be partners in this, and we could put anything we want to up for visibility and for a project, but it has to go through them. I mean, I'm assuming you were their resource during this process. Our ZBA tends not to use the town planner and puts her over in a seat in the corner and only refers to her occasionally if they feel like it.
But it sounds like you guys, with your staff, had really prepped this so that it was not easier for the ZBA, but
It's within the
Less
realm of what the
involvement.
ZBA can do. The ZBA is
Yeah.
restricted. They can only refuse things on 3 items, period. And it can't be economic, and it can't be NIMBY, and it can't be a lot of things. They like to try to do it.
And that's why I'd like to have them in for a structured discussion.
they-
It's like,
they
this
have
is
to
where
do it.
you guys fit in anything we could conceivably do.
And when you say they, you're saying the ZBA maybe come in before here.
Joint
and maybe
meeting.
have a,
I don't want to go to their meeting, I
Just
want
a
them to
thought
come here.
on that,
Yeah,
if
no,
I
no,
may. So in February, we offered an advanced training on Chapter 40B for ZBA members, and we handed out a handbook, and it was very detailed.
How many of ours came?
Right. So I'm wondering if it might be helpful to ask Judy Barrett if she might be willing to do an overview of the process, because it is very detailed and highly structured.
Maybe we
And
could
it's their
send it,
legal responsibility to actually use that structure. They can't just go
Sure.
off the reservation.
I think if we send an invite and see if they would come into one of our meetings, and then see if we could do like a joint training and have Judy do that presentation, maybe a scaled-down version. I think it's a great idea.
You've been hearing me say this since the very beginning. They've got to get in here because, I mean, Art was at a lot of those meetings. It was painful. It just went on, and they kept finding newer and newer things. This was Habitat.
Yeah.
They started getting into a discussion about their international financing in the ZBA discussion.
That,
That
that's,
was from the neighbors.
that's beyond their purview.
The actual board started talking about it too.
Is
It's
that
like,
right?
well, these people are coming in here. Well, it's not
Yeah.
I mean,
these
I was
people.
fortunate, we were fortunate, the ZBA was supportive of this, and, you know, they wasn't, you know, they did their due diligence as they should, you know, it wasn't a rubber stamp by any stretch, but, you know, and they did want, you know, more information, they wanted to come back a couple times, so it wasn't, you know, it wasn't.
That's all I ask. They can ask
Yeah.
as many
But
questions
they,
as they're
they
duly
understood
allowed
their
to.
role, and they understood how this was gonna fit into the community, and that, you know, it wasn't adversarial. They said, we wanna, you know, so they were supportive of the project, but they did their due diligence, and they, so you know, we were lucky in that sense, that we had a great board that just kinda knew the
Yeah.
role.
I mean, in times that I've done it before, nothing ever goes to the board unless everything is vetted. So by the time it gets to the board, it's ready to be approved, period. It just doesn't go unless it's ready to go.
Yeah, I think a big.
And that was
part-
your management style, and I thank you for that, but that hasn't always happened with people who followed beyond you.
Oh, no, this wasn't here.
Okay, well, I'm talking about here. And so, this is not something where I'm viewing them as a hostile army, but they gotta recognize we're one happy government. And that we have actually a strategic plan for doing something, and I'm glad to see the friendly 40B that actually used the second half of the 40B for workforce housing, because that's the one daunting thing, is everybody keeps looking at it as something you can't do, and I'm sure you can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that went a long way to selling this concept to the public, because, again, the NIMBY issues, the stereotypes, you know, that are, you know, unfounded, just, they do creep in, even if it's, you know, a great design like we had. And I think once people understood, this isn't just gonna be, you know, low income, you know, and we're not building brick tenement buildings, we don't do that anymore. It's not just gonna be low income, it's gonna be, you know, a diversity of incomes. And part of that was kind of the outreach of explaining, like, who is somebody that is 120% of AMI.
And
It's
that
a
would be my point.
professional-
It's somebody driving a truck for Nauset Disposal, somebody who's working in a classroom at
Exactly.
Nauset Regional.
Exactly. And
But those are people who could just pass the affordable eligible criteria, and they're stuck.
Yeah.
If you look at the chart that Charlene sent out, affordable housing for a family of 5 or 6 now is getting up into 6 figures. You know, you could be allowed to make close to $100,000 in Boston and still qualify.
Okay.
And I guess I would say, not to get off topic, but, you know, the groundwork for all this is really from the trust and the outreach and the education piece that can start, you know, now. Because then you're already explaining to people, like, these are not, you know, those people. There are people, you know, these are the people in your neighborhood kind of approach, like, it's
Right.
the teacher, it's the police, you know, like, you know, and that groundwork, you know, if you can permeate that through the community, so when you get to the time where you're actually talking about a physical site, hopefully people are comfortable with it and you don't have as much of the NIMBY stereotype stuff.
And just one little side comment, not to harp on this, but when people are talking about friendly and unfriendly 40B, that doesn't just mean one thing. Sometimes it can become unfriendly if the ZBA is not aware of their jurisdiction.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's kind of what I was implying.
It's not whether we're singing Kumbaya at the meeting or not.
So if we guys, staff can follow up and make sure we get an invite out to ZBA and see if Judy Barrett's available to
Already
come
noted.
in.
So just a couple of graphics. This is the site layout. Again, this is Route 6 out here, Brackett Road. This Pocket Park, again, that was a big selling point because there's a nice face on the, you know, front face to this for the community, and it's open to the park. You know, it's going to be open. There's some sandwich shops and stores here, so it's like the idea of, you know, come off the bike path or get a sandwich, you can come over here, there's gonna be picnic tables. This is not just an isolated affordable housing development down, off away. We wanted it to be, integrated, so there's a little park area that'll be here, the road comes in here, and then it winds its way down through here. These are all the townhouses arrayed along these village green areas, and they'll have some of the amenities here. There'll be a playground and a tot lot and some other things. This is the community building here. So it's a nice layout. We did have to negotiate with, this is the Main Street Mercantile.
My office.
Yep, where they work. So you get to see
We've
this
been
every
watching
day.
the whole thing, yeah.
We did have to negotiate with the ownership here to get a second means of egress. There's a little cut through between the two buildings. So there will be a little roadway that'll be for bikes and pedestrians and for emergency access only, but that was a little moving part to this whole thing, was to get that, because we didn't want any access onto Route 6, so that's how we have the secondary means of egress. Again, trying to keep as much of the natural buffer intact to shield it from the highway. There's something else I wanted to mention. There will be an RTA bus stop here, and yeah, we ended up with 105 parking spaces. Again, something that the planning board came up with is that, they wanted the design to be able to sort of land bank some areas, so if in the future, if they need to add parking spaces, it's kind of reserved, there's some room to make some more, again, because this gets into how is this place going to look? And the stereotypes that come up. There's going to be cars parked everywhere and somebody up on the lawn, all those things that, are really not founded, but you have to address them. And again, a lot of those things, those kind of ticky-tack things in the MOA, the washer dryer, there was things about, mailboxes, it's just those things that people get in their heads from way back when they're just thinking about tenement buildings. And so we build a lot of these things to make sure, whether they're gonna, we don't really build them that way anyways, but we just want to make sure it's in there. We can point to something and say, it's not going to be like that. We're going to have on-site management. If a window's broken, it's going to get fixed immediately. If the shingles are falling down, it's going to get fixed immediately. This is going to be a nice, well-kept neighborhood.
And did you do something like a lot of the Florida developments have, where there's no campers or trailers?
Yeah,
Or
there's
there's an area where you can put them?
There's some language in
Rules.
there, but we also, some of these parking areas, I think they're down here and here, are oversized, so that if someone is running their own business, they have a trailer or larger, they can park.
A rusty 56 Chevy or an old boat with a hole in it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's basically 1.5 spaces per unit.
Yeah.
But, so you can't really have a lot of parking, but if someone has their business, their oversized vehicle or trailer, there's some parking reserved for them that's not, because otherwise, some of these parking spaces along here are parallel spots, so we didn't want somebody taking up 2 spots just with their trailer that lives there, and coming
Yeah.
home every day. So,
Good.
yeah, those are some of the details that just kind of, planning board came up with that, and it was good, good
So
suggestions.
you mentioned that there's a management company. As part of the rental agreements that they have, is there money built in for maintenance and so forth to address the broken window and
Yeah,
and
well,
some of the other things
that
that?
falls under their operating pro forma, their budgeting.
That's built in then.
You raised an interesting point a second ago, though. Two of them put together. The owner's not the town of the project, right?
Well, we own the land,
you own
but
the
we're
land.
not,
You own the
we
land,
don't
but
own the,
So if somebody came back to amend the comprehensive permit, who is it that's doing that? If you say, okay, I need 20 more parking spaces, and we didn't covenant the land, it's not open space, it's just land that's surrounding it as part of the landscaping
the developer.
component.
Penrose would come back to the zoning board to amend it. And if Penrose ever needs to get out of this, they
Flipped
have to
it.
come back through, the comp permit is to Penrose. There's requirements and conditions that they have to come back to the zoning board. It has to get reauthorized, so they just can't hand it off to some other developer.
So they can't flip the property to.
No.
You have like a
Does the-
covenant that gets signed between the town in Penrose
Yeah, and
that
that,
prohibits some of
and
those
that
activities.
ensures that the town has some control, to make sure whoever's coming in here to run this thing is competent and is gonna do the same
That's in the
quality.
comp permit, or is that in the?
There's
just the-
conditions in the comp permit.
Yeah, that's filed with the state.
Mhm.
And does the town have first right of refusal to buy out? Like, say the company owns it for 20 years and they get back their credit, they've made their money kind of thing? Is that something that you guys explored?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, okay.
I
Curious.
don't remember, there might be
Yeah.
something in the MOA with the selectmen, I don't recall. I don't think there's anything in the comprehensive permit to
But
that.
after 99 years, you get the land and the buildings back.
Yeah, they're not.
Generally, they build in it after 99 years of right of first refusal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be in that agreement, I can't
99
recall
years,
offhand.
I don't plan
Again,
on
this is
being
just a schematic of the.
Comes
I
out to be
think Eastham,
198
I don't think
years
Eastham will be here.
with the
It
first
was
refusal.
different.
I won't
Who
even-
It was
knows?
different in Yarmouth because the developer actually purchased the land. So,
Yes.
and they can't transfer it for a minimum of
25.
15 years, I thought it was.
25.
Maybe it was 25 years.
It
But it
depends
is
on how
deed
you do it.
restricted.
They've done that in Boston, and the Boston developments are restricted. The first 99 years, that makes it mortgageable because they're for sale there. And then there is an option for the next 99. And that's effectively how the City of London is built, and it just operates on a land lease system ad infinitum.
The whole
Just
country
never
of
ends.
Israel's like that, yeah.
Okay, why don't you, you have more slides?
This was the last one, I think. It's just a schematic of the architectural elevations. So again, there's different building types. There's some units that, different configurations. But again, everybody has a front door. That was kind of a big selling point. The units that have the third floor, they're actually only two. There's a ground floor and a second floor unit. This is second level on the second unit. If you follow, there's like a loft. So there's no actual there's not really any actual three-story buildings. It's these loft areas that go with this level. And
When
so
you said elderly friendly, does that mean that they just have ground level, a certain amount of them are ground level units, so that way
there's
they don't have
there's
the
ground level
stairs?
units. There are, I think they ended up being 5 ADA, like certified ADA compliant, and there's a certain percentage, I can't recall, there's a certain percentage that have to be, meet what they call visitability standards, so low threat, they're not total ADA compliant as far as like counter height and the accommodations for the sinks and all that, but they have zero threshold, so basically you're not going up a step, there's zero threshold up to the step and throughout, so, and that gets more towards the accommodating an older demographic that's not ADA, it's not ADA compliant, but it's more user-friendly, I guess you'd say, so.
And just, are these 2 and 3 units, 2 or 3 structures within the individual structures? Because is the threshold 4 or more for sprinklers? Is there a
Some of
reason
them-
why it was sized?
Yeah, no, some of these have 4, and they are sprinkled.
And they are sprinkled, no?
And that's part of before we even got to the zoning board, refining the plans was a huge part, going over it with the building commissioner and the fire department and, and code.
Mm-hmm.
Code compliance.
Code compliance was big, because that can throw everything off in a heartbeat. You get in there and you don't realize, you gotta sprinkle this, we didn't think we did.
Right.
So that was a big part of the homework, is just making sure everything was squared away. And then again, just kind of logistical things, once they were ready for construction, we just made a point to have, pre-construction meetings. We got everybody from the architects to the engineers to the general contractor, management guys, to the alarm guy, everybody on their side, and all of our inspectors. We had a big round table, make sure everyone was on the same page, what the expectations
I
were.
call that the operational meetings, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and we had a couple of those, and again, it just sets the tone, make sure everyone knows each other, you know who you're dealing with, and you know what the expectations are, like, more on what the town's expectations are for when to expect an inspection, how far in advance, what our scheduling availability is and, you know, what we want to see for plans or, so.
Brendan may know this, but you're here right now, before you leave. Were these things subject to the flex code being built? I'm trying to think of how we...
Stretch code?
Stretch code, yeah, good.
I
I'm
don't-
trying to
I
see
don't
if we
know.
can get other partners, or at least people who would have an affinity to this. I mean, it'd be easier to sell to some of the community that's interested in the ecology and the...
Right.
What's the stretch code, just for,
Energy efficiency.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's to build houses holistically, where you're talking about the refrigerator being worth something versus the
Did Eastham adopt
windows.
the stretch code, though? That's, it has to be done by local.
Yeah, we don't have it.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
but
don't
even the
have
building
that.
code now is only about that far away from...
Yeah, I know.
Very
I know.
close, yeah.
You know,
It is close.
you just want a place where you can strike a match in September and it keeps the heat going until the following May, so.
Yeah, but, you know, joke about it, but if you're looking at stakeholders so that you can create a majority, like our fire chief would be real happy about the idea that he's got sprinklers in those buildings.
Oh, yeah.
He'd love it if everybody had sprinklers in their
Yeah.
buildings.
And kind of on that, unfortunately, one thing that didn't work out was that this didn't line up with, we couldn't run natural gas to the site. So it's on electric, which
Okay,
is
you must have a
unfortunate.
moratorium.
I think we can now, based on driving around Harwich for the last
Yeah,
year.
the moratorium's in there.
but you guys
unfortunate-
have some
They're still,
solar,
they're still on
right?
on hookups.
No, not
You
on
don't have
this.
town solar?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
There was some
Not on
discussion
my
about
street.
looking
Sign
into
on
it in
That's
the
because-
future, if they could add on to it, but
Yeah,
basically, we ended up with, you know, the highest efficiency electrical system they could do. We looked at propane, but that just wasn't gonna work. Propane with an eye to, you know, can we switch over later to gas, but it just didn't.
So it's all electric with heat pumps
Yeah,
and air
Yeah,
conditioning?
so that you know, that was one big thing that we just couldn't make it work. We couldn't physically,
Mm.
weren't able to do
You can,
that.
you can put up solar panels,
yeah,
yeah.
Did
Yeah,
that on
that's something we
Gomes
can
Way.
look into, so.
yeah. Did you
Uh,
guys do anything about water, with the outdoor engineering? Anything specific?
Irrigation, outdoor.
Well, not irrigation, no, not irrigation.
Natural landscape.
Natural
Geothermal.
landscape, no, natural landscaping and for.
Yeah,
Attenuation.
the landscaping
Runoff and-
scheme's gonna
Keep
try to be low maintenance to the extent they can. There's some
Capture water.
bioretention basins built into it to handle the storm runoff.
Yeah.
That's what that board is, just the layouts for what'll happen there. So there's a bioretention up in this, park area, and then down here, or no, I think down in here. Under here is the wastewater treatment, the leaching field underneath this green. And then there are some swales and natural retention basins built into the project, so.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you have a sense of why you only received 2 bids?
I think this project is still, it's a big project, major project for Eastham, but I think it's still pretty small time in the grand scheme of what's going on elsewhere off Cape. So, you know, I think was a big part of it, and it's just, you know, doing business on the Cape and the outer Cape, you know, the cost of doing business goes up the farther you get out here, so I think it was, that's just my read on it. And again, I think it was it's a small project in the grand scheme of what a lot of the developers are doing, so that's my guess on it, but.
Any other observations or? any
No,
other
that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I said I'll
It's great.
provide the slides, and then I think I forwarded.
Yeah, we have
you-
everything else.
Yeah, I should say, I forwarded all the info to Andrea. I didn't get a chance to give it to Chris, so.
The PowerPoint, you mean? or-
No, some of the background stuff. I have copies of the comp permit and the MOA. That's all public.
Love to see both of
Oh,
those,
yeah.
We should just get
that'd be
a
great.
package together of all the materials so we can all go through it
but electronically.
electronically, yeah.
Yeah, don't
Similar
put
to
it,
how we do like the selectmen's
don't put it
meeting
in
packet.
windmill, though.
Not in
Turbine?
windmill?
Why?
Anything but
can't open
windmill.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Straight
Oh,
PDF for this guy.
I thought,
We're pitching for
But you didn't
Dropbox.
have that issue when
just
I
PDF.
sent you a PDF.
Just
So.
PDF.
Okay.
Okay. Just one last may feed into, just a feasibility study, or how did you know at the beginning when you put together the RFP, like how big of a project to ask? Did you get help from MHP, or just do it yourself, or?
We did it ourselves. We had our housing consultant, Alice Boyd, who was on
Okay.
board, is, you know, the guru of every, so she, you know, she's done a million of these, and she kind of knew what would work as far as what she thought you would get a good bite from developers, but also, so it was kind of that. But what the lot could handle, you know, septic design-wise, that was really what drove it. You know, as far as what can we put on here that would make sense, number of bedrooms,
Okay.
what would work with the wastewater treatment. So that was kind of like, that was probably the major baseline, and starting from there. And then say, this is the max we could do. Is that too much? Let's pull back just to make sure we don't want to like overdo this site. And again, with public opinion, just oversell it with, you know, crazy density on it. So we kind of started with the max, pulled it back a little bit. But this is a lot more than some of the earlier.
So you'd recommend we start out about 500 or 600 units and work our way down?
Yeah.
To 7? I don't think so.
And then real quickly, total dollars that you put in after the RFP and feasibility study,
Just get Alice.
was it that $300,000, back to one of the first slides?
It was, so there was 750,000 in two CPA appropriations.
Mm-hmm.
400,000 from the town, which came out of a few
Infrastructure,
different,
isn't it
for
what
the
you said?
infrastructure. And then 300 from the housing trust itself.
Housing trust, okay.
Yeah, and then there was 100,000 each from Orleans and Wellfleet CPA.
Right, that was it, right. Okay, thank you.
That was one thought that I had. You can do that when you're the first one, but if everybody starts creating their own trusts, I really don't see our surrounding towns throwing in by giving us money when they're trying to do something on their own.
Well, I think that was
Chatham
Chatham might.
also
Chatham
They
might.
don't have-
Chatham,
if they
because
don't
of
have the land area
the
to
school
do it.
system too.
Chatham might, but you know what I'm saying is
We
that
do share a lot with Chatham, so
Yeah.
there's a chance there.
Yeah.
Well, my
We on
take on
tape?
that is, this opens up
Hold that thought.
a lot of opportunity for discussion that could overlap to other things outside of housing, because you got.
we've actually already done that part with Chatham.
Yeah, what does Chatham have that we don't, and vice versa? So they can help, we can help them with their housing, they're gonna help, they're gonna help us with our wastewater. You know, what
Exactly.
else can we, you know? So I think taking that approach, it's not just, you know, and in some sense, you know, in some respects, you know, the neighboring towns, you know, that's less units that they have to build, you know,
Yeah, well,
they're
this is-
getting the credit.
This isn't a conversation that you're actually totally privy to. We already share a school system with them, we already share
Well,
a sewer
Paul's from
system with
Harwich
them.
too, yeah,
So, I mean, the bottom line is, this is just an increment.
yeah.
They already bought land in our town. They own part of Muddy Creek in our town. They didn't just buy
Just call it
their own
Charlie.
We
property.
split the cost in the Muddy Creek project.
Yeah, but I mean, the
We
point
buy the
is that
town
we have a lot of,
bandstand. We can buy the town bandstand.
but we could probably do that
Okay.
there. I'm just saying that Brewster, you start looking around, and they're all starting to create their own housing trusts. Unless it made sense near a border or something, I can't see them doing what Orleans did with you particularly.
Yeah,
up
I don't
front.
know, I think you might be surprised, I think
it's a relief in some ways and.
Might be,
And
but
the
Orleans
state-
has its own circumstances. Fo is
Yeah.
kind of like a not
the state
functioning
really
organization.
likes that.
Yes.
That was a big plus in getting the tax credit. And they see something that's gonna serve a region, I mean, obviously, they wanna spread the money, get the big bang for their money. So they, you know, that was a big,
How'd you sell them on that, though? Because the preferences on this, as soon as you get past the border at Eastham, become Barnstable, not Orleans.
that was a little bit of a leap of faith for Orleans and East, Wellfleet. We couldn't guarantee them the local preference. That's how the Barnstable County, so that was the best we could do. Not to say that maybe that will change if more towns start doing this, and maybe the state will.
Maybe it boils down to location too. I mean, you're not gonna drive from
Watershed.
Sandwich all the way down there to
Right.
get the benefit
That's
of
part
it,
of it,
so.
too.
And Wellfleet's kind of locked between Provincetown and Eastham anyway, so their options aren't great.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time and
Yeah, that's-
information.
My pleasure.
Look forward
Happy
to
to be
going
here.
Another
through
field
the
trip.
material in a more detailed way. It's nice that we can all help each other by sharing information. On the next item on the agenda, discussion regarding the next steps after town meeting. So I think despite the length of town meeting, it ended up for us. I mean, we got the ADU bylaw was
that's great.
passed that we had supported, so that was a real positive. Funding from the CPC for the 340,000 got adopted as well, so that was a positive. And then the transfer of land from general municipal use to the trust with a little amendment and a little stuff at the end. Ultimately, it did get voted, so I think that was a
Yeah, I want to make a
positive.
comment about that to those folks. It didn't have the effect that anyone thought it had. It's not something that tied our hands. The amendment that went through really doesn't say much of anything. We weren't going to be building in that area, period. We weren't going to be able to be building in that
Was
area.
that up on Oak?
The
That's
depot.
Oak. Yep,
On
J3.
Depot, yeah.
The Depot Road one.
So the amendment that,
Did we get the language on, I actually, because town
It's
meeting
not
ended so.
available yet.
but there's no net effect, ultimately.
Because the moderator actually hand wrote that out, so I asked if we could track down a
So no,
printed copy of that.
really no effect.
No, that's kind of why I was huddling with everybody over by the bleachers. It was like, what happens if this passes? Kind of nothing. So it wasn't worth arguing over to the extent that we still retained the land that we wanted to develop. It's unclear to me what, and I'm not sure if they even knew what effect it's going to have about counting the entire area for density purposes on the upland. But
Right.
I'm kind of in agreement with you. You do what you do and wait until somebody tells you that you can't do it.
Yep.
Ultimately, I don't see that amendment actually being specific enough to do that.
I just want to
That's
make
not
sure that
happening.
we get the language in there about water. And when we had first talked about this as a committee, we had said that if we do, if, 40B goes in there, that it would be a zero nitrogen or lowest system.
For nitrogen purposes?
For
mitigation.
nitrogen and phosphorus, yeah. Because you're sitting, that's part of the.
Yeah, septics don't remove nitrogen.
Yes, they don't. And we had discussed that.
Yeah.
And agreed that was, critical because of the location of that land.
And I don't think we're backing off of that. This
Yeah.
is a project.
No, I just want to make sure we get that either in writing somewhere or, and I think that's important for the public too, to
Yeah.
dissuade any nervousness on that part too.
I think if we're building a sewer system, we don't want to certainly add a problem next door to where we're building it. So I think that probably does make a lot
Well,
of
until we
sense
get a
to-
sewer
to
system
look.
in there.
Yeah, that's not,
Well, in that area, I don't think we're going that far even.
it doesn't
Right.
seem to me it's in any phase.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't believe it's either. So, we were hoping, we tried to invite Laura Schufelt, who
So I
was
spoke
actually.
with her earlier.
Do you wanna?
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick synopsis of the call. So Laura is very, very sorry. She fully planned to be here for the meeting and was looking forward to it and kind of kicking off our work with MHP in the pre-development phase now that town meeting is over. But just a whole bunch of transportation issues and she was in Boston and couldn't get here in time. So she does apologize. She will be here for the next meeting, assuming that you meet at your regularly scheduled meeting time. But a couple things that she wanted me to relay to you are that actually yesterday she had a chance to drive around Harwich and visit the sites. And, kind of back of the envelope recommendation is she thinks it might make sense for the trust to consider the smaller parcels first that have fewer issues. She called out Oak Street and potentially Sisson Road. I don't think that she saw Willow, but that might be another one on the list. I'm not familiar with that property as much. But to focus on a smaller project to get started.
The Depot Street one, that was kind of a small one in West Harwich. Is
She didn't say that specifically.
Uh,
Is that the one that has a steeper incline?
It's by the cemetery and the church intersection of Depot and,
She didn't call that one out specifically, but I think the point was to
that
just
one
do
probably
the
lends
smaller
itself
one.
to a small duplex or something.
It may, but has issues too. I think Oak was one of the first ones we talked about, and I'm glad that she identified that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't see any environmental things. That was the whole point of calling these folks in for the golf, because
Right.
it doesn't look like we're despoiling the environment. You can put your arms around it, and it looks like it's something that we could actually,
And it's of a size that we can bite off initially.
yes,
Right.
all things. I mean, so I'm glad that she
So it
agrees.
sounds like you're on the same page as far as that. She also said that we should be looking out for an award letter for MHP to formalize the relationship between the trust and MHP, and that along with that, they also do tend to offer pre-development support. So we can expect some help with that so that maybe trust dollars can go a little bit further in this first phase. Let's see, that was the gist of it. What we wanted to have a conversation about was the actionable next steps as far as pre-development work, but obviously prioritizing the parcels is first. So I'm hoping that that can be the conversation that happens at the next meeting, is exactly what is gonna happen next, and make some concrete decisions about which parcels to move forward with first.
We'd like it a little bit warmer before we go trekking through these sites.
What's warm to you, given where you've come from?
90 degrees.
Up to Florida.
End of July.
That would be July.
right?
We can't go anywhere until July.
So June 20th, that's probably pretty reasonable. I mean, it seems like a long way away, but not really, but
It's
what
really
do people
not.
think of that?
I gotta
Well,
make a
you
trip
said
to Nova
she
Scotia
booked
next.
it, so she
She is available.
is available
June
on that
20th,
day?
yeah.
Okay, so maybe that answers that. And then she'll come in with a contract with us to do pre-development review or an agreement
We will
with
have an
us?
award letter before then.
We'll have an award letter before
Yep.
then. Because we would need to have that on the agenda to officially vote that as a agency.
And I would suggest following that on with the selectmen having it on the agenda so that they know where we're at.
Yes.
Because they're looking for reports, that's better than a report.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the, having watched Paul's presentation, that, what did he say, 18 building, 100 beds, 100,
132.
Yeah,
132. I
you know,
think
if we
it's
can
18
pick out
structures.
something along Oak Street that's
18
reasonable,
buildings.
that we can bite off, that's a half a dozen or 10 or 12 units, something like that, I think that would be a great start, so we can get something going in the ground. The last thing we want is a year from now to be sitting here and saying, gee, we really gotta get going on something.
Yeah.
So we need to have an agenda item so that we can vote and establish priority order. Because
Yeah.
we can say whatever we want to here, it's not on the agenda. So if we could put it on the agenda, so we can actually get
Yeah.
to the point of
So
setting our
we can list off,
priorities.
maybe get the motion from town meeting, what they officially approved.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
And
in
then we can establish
prioritizing
the
and
priority.
voting that we
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
do Oak particularly.
So June 20th at 2 PM?
June 20th at 2.
Then having said that, you know, as we work through the ones that are least problematic on the list,
Mhm.
keep in mind the town meeting for next year, because this is the time to prepare for it. But I think we should probably look at parcels that, you know, we might have taken off Albro House and Earl Road to look at that are easy fixes. I mean, because Earl Road is easy. I hate to say it. I mean, physically, it's easy.
Well,
Well, we're getting, I did ask for kind of a legal opinion on what is the current assignment of that property, and if it is conservation, then we may not be able to take it out irregardless, so.
That's good to get that, but the last time I read
it's
the
not.
transfer document, it was general municipal purposes. That makes it up to the selectmen.
I thought it was recreation more specifically, but it wasn't conservation.
Yeah,
It-
This part,
we need
yeah.
to get a determination whether we can or
If it's
not.
recreation, we'll build a nice
Yep.
3-field softball field with sodium vapor lights. That'll
There you
do
go.
it.
We don't have, it's kind of my point, we don't have to build anything anywhere. Albro House, we don't have to build Albro House, we have to have it under our jurisdiction. If we wanted to flip it
Yeah.
and create capital to be able to do a project somewhere else, we could do that.
And so the folks that are in there right now, do they have a place to go? So the youth group,
They're
It
leasing
would be,
that.
it would just be the only town agency that's in there is the youth director.
but is there a
And
place?
we have others.
Does the
We have been
town-
aggregating
We've got to
real estate.
identify locations.
But, so I would hope that whoever does the prep work locates places where they could go, because that's just making a problem.
Yeah, I think Sheila could
Yeah.
probably help us
Yeah.
by making a recommendation of where she
Yeah.
sees herself.
Okay.
But-
And, like,
But my
bringing
bigger
her
point
into the
was, it was getting
conversation.
confused, and it was better to not discuss it at all
Yeah.
than it was to get caught up in
And that's
not
why
getting
it got
anything.
pulled.
Ultimately, people still don't have the idea that the trust can take jurisdiction, can sell a property and reapply that money somewhere else to buy a property even, because that's why you don't have to go to town meeting every time you do something.
Just transfer it.
Right.
Yep.
Or can we just keep the leasing in place?
Yeah,
You could, but I'm
Same
saying that
difference?
it's not just, hey, I don't see how we can put 4 families in the Albert House. That's not just the
Right.
discussion.
Right.
It's a bigger discussion. And you're gonna get into these discussions. Willow Street, it's been, it's immense problems, and they don't have to do with vernal pools or anything. It has been a generational discussion
Right.
about, you can't take this, which is what Habitat actually was trying to get the town property behind there to do a larger scale project on the West Harwich project that did get built. And they decided finally to cut loose because it was really a problem. The neighbors with pitchforks and torches, pretty much.
7 meetings of the zoning board of appeals to get that through.
Yeah, but, and that was part of that problem, is that property on Willow Street.
Yeah.
It's a fractured title,
Yeah,
the
just on-
frontage. I
Just
mean,
on that, because we do have approval, the issues with the boundary line, so town meeting did approve 2 years ago, or not this past year, year before, to go in and negotiate boundary line agreements. So the Board of Selectmen has the authority to do those agreements.
but they have yet to do them.
I have yet to get to all the material for us to be able to bring that to the board.
So they're
We
problems.
do have authority to clear up the issues related to the title is. the
And
bottom
is
line.
there a list that we, or maybe it's just of the selectmen, I know that they've been working on it, of town properties that they were considering? A list that you're working from that you
Real estate
bring-
and open space actually has a dual function. They're not supposed to just be
And 'cause
protecting
you
open
were
space
working
land. They're
on
supposed to
two.
be able to delineate what land we do have and what use it would be best put to, whether it's
Yeah.
protected or built on. And that second part has been a problem. It's really Rios that would make the recommendations about what we
They
have.
do have a meeting tomorrow morning. Actually, we're gonna be over in Dennis tomorrow morning for our DHY meeting.
Yes, we are.
And
but,
you were working on a list too, right, with some of the selectmen?
We did, actually, staff-wise, we generated a
Mainly,
list.
land to purchase.
Oh, it wasn't town-owned, or it wasn't challenged, title challenged.
Now,
Okay.
last time the
Title
town actually
challenge.
did anything flexible were
We could
they flipped the
purchase a
title for one piece and they bought another piece, was Factory Road, and that
We
was
could-
20 years ago.
You know, it seems to me that we could sell a piece of land for a profit and put that money back into the trust account, buy another piece. We can trade land.
That's
We
kind
can
of what I'm
we can
saying.
do a
But do we have
variety
like
of
a
things.
master list of what land
No,
the town owns?
The list that we have now that's under our care, custody, and control,
Yeah,
that's ours.
I don't think that, we don't have a master
need to
list.
do
What
I guess
we,
I don't have
what we
that
have
list.
done is.
I don't have, I don't,
But she's got a point. I mean, we may want to have a master
Right.
list so we can figure out what we're
We've
doing.
gone through staff-wise with GIS to identify parcels, so I know that through Rios, really, that they have identified parcels that are general municipal use that could be used for, in a lot of cases, they would like to have it for conservation land, to Don's point.
so there is a master list, kind of?
It's more of a master
Kinda.
map than a list, I think.
We need a
is-
list. You're
yeah.
right. And same thing as bringing in the ZBA. I'm putting my government hat on now. I was infuriated that we got to the point of town meeting where Rios had to come up to the mic and say that they just met and they're holding onto a tree on a piece of property that we were involved with and weren't in favor of it. That can't happen again,
No.
ever. We have to have people in front of us before we walk into another building and have a town meeting. I mean, it was
He had-
embarrassing.
He had come to the, he had spoken here
He came
when
to
we
At
did
the
the
forum.
info meeting.
Yeah, but we invited Real Estate and Open Space a few months before that to have a discussion, and then all of a sudden I felt like we were kneecapped at the meeting.
And they
That's the kind of
should
thing
have-
that should have gone to the Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen
No, I
after here.
agree, I
And
agree.
quite frankly, they should have, if they had a difficulty, told us that that's not the place to raise a problem.
Did I mention we're
Town
one
meeting.
happy government?
Yeah.
It really should be brought to the Board of Selectmen first, before you get to a town meeting.
Absolutely.
That was like embarrassing. It was like a foreign army marching on the project, but
Yeah.
we're all the same town.
That damn Trojan horse.
And their charge is to recognize both priorities. It's not just to recognize what they're protecting from building.
So question, who on this committee is the voice for the committee? Because he did come before the forum as the committee member, and you were not here, and he did bring that up, and it was not a good
Judith,
thing.
The
Yeah.
distinction though is,
Yeah.
there were at least 2, perhaps 3 instances in which this conversation had the opportunity to occur.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
And explanations were provided that apparently were not suitable. But the 100-foot buffer specifically was only brought up at town meeting.
Oh, he didn't mention that.
They drew a line, there's a
Oh.
line already on
Okay.
J3, they drew a line slightly above that,
Yeah.
south of the vernal pools. And then they proposed at town meeting, that's that amendment. That was the surprise.
So who?
It was never presented to us.
I mean, after that meeting, the information meeting, when they
Right.
raised issue, I did talk to John Giorgio. I said I was gonna talk to John Giorgio. We took out the vernal pools. We can't construct there anyway.
No,
and then-
my question's about how do we,
Chris, you made those
how do
changes, though.
we
And
Avoid
that was-
that, yeah.
avoid
They
that
went
in the
on
We
one
future?
made
step.
those changes and they
Yeah.
wanted additional. So
They did it.
Kathy Green, I think I had talked to, there wasn't a lot of turnaround time. After that meeting, I talked to John Giorgio within a day or two. Kathy Green came in, I said we made those changes of agreeing not to construct on the vernal pools or the area around them, consistent with state law, and then anything south of the endangered species. And I didn't get a sense from her that she had any heartburn with it. In fact, I thought she was more pleased that the motion was amended to reflect some of that. And it really wasn't until the floor town meeting that he came up with the additional northern line that was above that, which I think is the point, where did that deliberation
But if we
occur?
pushed really hard on that, the whole,
Yeah, okay.
If I may interject a suggestion, and only a suggestion, I believe when it comes to Real Estate and Open Space Committee, they should have a seat on the board. They're a very integral part of this whole project. And we went through the angst of what happens when we don't communicate with them, or I'm not going to take sides here, but I was privy to both sides of what was going on. And they're a very hardworking committee. They're very dedicated. And I mean, when I say hardworking committee, everyone on the committee contributes, unlike some other committees. But so, and maybe, and it's not something I'm going to do today, but just a suggestion, and maybe it should be opened up. This committee should be opened up.
I would
Further. Thank
absolutely
you.
be against that.
yeah.
They're a resource, and they're actually a town committee. And the reason I'm against that, and I understand that you would like to infer onto everybody being reasonable and nice, but I'm looking here at the timeline. The housing forum was on April 30th. It takes 48 hours to post a legitimate public meeting. Town meeting was when?
The 6th, May 6th.
The 30th, the 6th. And how did they get to a posted meeting with a subject this big and flying under the radar screen without anybody knowing about it? Not just the trust, they work for somebody. 5 of us appoint them.
They had a meeting after the
After
forum?
the
He did say he
forum.
had a meeting, but
No, it was after the forum. I asked him when
it
the
was
hell.
after the forum, but when he answered your question, is it in the minutes? It wasn't a really straightforward answer.
I know.
'Cause I don't know how
Because
you
I
have
asked
a-
him point blank
He wasn't
on the
sure.
side. I said, when the hell did you post this thing?
Yeah.
How did you get a public meeting after the 30th but before May 6th? Was it really posted and did you really have a meeting? And he assured me he did, but then the next question is the earnestness of that. The fact is that they had a very small window. They did a public meeting, if they did in fact have a public meeting. I don't know I haven't gone
Gotta
back
look
and
at
checked.
the
I saw that they had a meeting.
But we're either working on the same team or not. With them sitting here or not sitting here, they had another meeting that they didn't let anybody know about. It just got posted without, proactively telling us
And then it
or
showed up
the
at
selectmen
town
that they
meeting.
were doing
And
it.
sort of a town meeting.
And then they showed up at town meeting and said, you can't do that, here's the line that we agreed to.
I do think to the point about communication, it's a good point. I have kind of pleaded with them that we have a standing meeting on DHY for Friday mornings at 9 o'clock. And could they please move their date? They did move it once, and I did attend the meeting because they moved it to the afternoon on Friday. But, I don't know if anyone's available to go to Friday morning, or I think on their agenda, they
Sometimes.
I'm doing
have,
sewage.
they have a item on their agenda, if I remember, we looked it up this morning to see when their next meeting is.
Yeah.
And they were gonna appoint someone to try to attend these meetings. But I don't
Do you
know if,
know-
just Friday mornings on that Friday is just
Oh,
tough
I've got
tough for really Dawn and I,
water
because Dawn's.
I'm their
on the-
liaison.
Every
I
Friday?
did not know about this.
Every Friday, really? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, why wouldn't they, should we just ask them to
Oh,
come
oh,
to our
yeah,
next meeting?
yeah, yeah.
Maybe you just weren't checking your email.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Bizarre.
This is
Well,
not the
that's-
first time we've had disagreements with them. All I say is, it's a coherent government, and if you don't like the government you got, then vote another government. But in the meantime, you got the government you got. And we all should be functioning by pulling in the same direction. If they have objections, bring those objections up, but they've been here.
Right.
I don't recall them drawing a green line on a chart for us here. Am I missing something, or am I not
He
remembering?
did at that presentation.
In the
he
forum, though, was,
did-
I mean, that was not an appropriate place
And they
to
could,
to draw a
I
line
doubt
and
that they
present
were
it to me
posted to say
saying-
anything as a committee at the forum. Because the mere existence of a posted forum doesn't give them the right to meet as a committee at the forum.
I agree with that, because we did not meet as a committee, we just did the forum ourselves.
This is a government entity,
Yeah.
all of it is, so.
Well, that sounds like if you're the liaison, maybe you need to have a discussion with,
Yeah,
with
I
When
mean,
I,
your-
when I
your group
calm
that
down,
you
I
guys are-
will.
I mean, their mission statement, the purpose and mission of the Harwich Real Estate and Open Space Committee is to study and make recommendations to Harwich elected officials and voters. Didn't seem like a recommendation, you know, that's all.
No, it was a demand.
Seemed like
It
a
was more of
demand,
a
you're
demand.
right.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
They were holding the whole thing hostage, and they were going to wind up saying, we'll vote against the whole thing then.
Right.
That was the gambit. I mean, and that's why I was willing to cut loose on,
Yeah.
you know, the amendment, because if that's what they wanted, but the bigger issue was, I was furious.
Procedure.
I'm admitting it on camera, and I told them directly, when the hell did you guys think that it was a good idea for you to just meet and kneecap us at town meeting without ever letting anybody know that that's what you were up to? So the time frame was mighty small.
It was.
I mean, this was a proactive thought. It just didn't happen, Art. I mean, it wasn't because they didn't have a seat at the table. They've been invited here before, and they knew what we were up to. So it would be disingenuous. That the reason they did it was because, well, they couldn't understand what we were up to because we never invited them in. That did happen.
Okay. I think that was a good discussion. When we move on to the housing coordinator report?
Yep. Belinda, can you tell us the balance, please?
Yes, balance for April is $545,120.09. Last month, or March is $445.77 with a difference of $43.09.
Do we have that in writing somewhere here? or-
We can put it in the minutes.
Yeah, I'm a big believer rolling into a meeting with stuff that you talk about
Yeah,
at
if
the
we could
meeting.
just have
Well, that's
Carol
great
print
guidance
off.
for
Okay.
us to
The
do
only
that
spending that
before.
we've really done is just the mailings to people to let them know that we had the,
Yeah, I don't think that's included in this figure, though.
okay.
At
that's
least she
coming
didn't
up.
call it out specifically. Yep. Is there something else you
But
need
just
to
ask
say?
Carol Capola to print off a report.
So
Certainly.
you want it into the agenda?
Coming into the meeting, so
Yeah,
that the
it's-
public
As part
could
of the
actually
packet.
understand it as part of the meeting.
Put it in the minutes.
For
For
now,
now
we
we
can put it
can,
in the
but-
minutes, but yeah, in the future, anything that's on the agenda, if we have backup information, we should just have it scanned. as
Kind
part
of thwarts the whole idea of being online with a robust presence if we don't have the information online.
Mm-hmm.
Noted.
Do you want me to pass these out?
Yeah, I'll take it in a sec. So the March and April monthly reports are in your packet, and I'm not going to go through them unless you all have specific questions. Nope. Okay. What I really wanted to talk about, and I know that we're getting late in the meeting, so I won't get into a full presentation, but you'll notice that the Grafton Action Plan was in your packet for the second time. So I brought it into the meeting a few months ago as a suggestion for something that the trust could do after town meeting. And so here we are, after town meeting. So I put it in there as a refresher. But I think what I'm looking for is a brief conversation just clarifying the trust's intention to move forward with an action plan and kind of give me some clarity around that. So just as a refresher, the purpose of an action plan, it's really kind of the first step that a trust goes through once they've formed, and you're still a very young trust, so we're still on track with that. But the idea behind having an action plan is that it helps the trust develop very concrete funding priorities and priorities generally. That will then lead to funding guidelines and an application process so that the public and developers, for example, can come forth and seek funding, and there is a very straightforward process for how that funding gets distributed. You could also potentially include a development strategy, since it looks like the town has a big appetite to actually develop some land. And so a good example would be, you know, it's typical for developers to be approaching towns, public-private partnerships are options that come up. It's really important to have priorities in place prior to making those decisions. And so having a document like this would help you be more effective and use resources more effectively.
Can we move that from down here to up there for the next agenda so that we can literally have a voting discussion?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Should
I just
we-
wanted to, I wanted to know exactly,
I mean, should we use like the Grafton plan as a base model, or?
Well, I think that we could really have a good discussion about this first. Rather than me presenting you with a process outline, I wanted to have a better conversation about expectations and goals for the process and approach, because every town is different. So it sounds like maybe next meeting might be more appropriate for that.
And I think if we can have like a constructive discussion, you know, just put in there, what are the topics that you want, you know, to get direction on?
Okay.
I think public-private partnership, do we want to focus on town land, bigger parcel projects, smaller parcels? I think those topics make a lot of sense in terms of,
And you know what else? I mean, we haven't discussed it, which is exactly why I'm mentioning it. We're a year in, or almost. I don't want us to forget that we can also do rehab. It's not just about laying foundations and putting sticks on. We've already got some houses that we could be rehabbing to make sure that they don't wind up going.
The woman that spoke at the town meeting about going out and cutting grass up in North Harwich, I have no clue where she was cutting the grass. It wasn't my yard, but,
So it wasn't in your backyard, is
no,
what
it
you're
would have
saying?
been nice. But she said there were a number of homes that could be rehabbed up there.
Yeah, there are a lot of derelict homes, and this doesn't supplant the other thing. We have a charge to do all things. And where that might fit in, I don't know, but I'm a little concerned that a year in, we got some property and we're talking about prioritizing what we put on it, but we also need to consider the other part of our charge. I don't care that we come up with rehabbing next month, I just care that it's on the radar screen.
yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we should do some kind of information or a open house or something, or just video that tells people that if you do have a home that needs rehab.
Yeah, but that's a
Some
little
way we
premature.
can
We haven't
guide
actually
people.
discussed that that's part of our action plan.
No, we
Right,
haven't
and
yet.
if someone did want to come before the trust, then what?
Yeah, I don't want to do
Right.
it one-off. I mean, I really want to.
So is this similar to the program that used to be in Harwich? Is that the
Under
idea?
Community development block.
Eastham
Community
has it,
development block?
Yeah.
Brewster
Yeah.
has it.
So we're
I think
taking over
Yarmouth
that?
has it.
Is that,
I wouldn't say taking over, but I think if somebody has a property that they're willing, or they need additional financial assistance and they're willing to commit to having it become affordable, then that would be an opportunity for us to partner up with somebody that has a property to convert it into an affordable unit.
And there are criteria for that. That's why I asked the lawyer when she
Oh,
first came down,
okay.
what constitutes a rehab project as opposed to a repair project, which is always.
That's the,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
'cause
And the
that-
answer basically
this-
was, what we say is a rehab project is a rehab project. So, but beyond that, we're not doing anything right now. And like I said, Brewster, Eastham, Yarmouth, I mean, that's a component of what they're up to. It's probably not our highest priority, but I'd love us to say, okay, we got land, and here's how we're going to prioritize how we do that. And over here, we have the potential of doing a program. What does that look like? What are we looking at as a potential service base?
So is it the
Who is
idea-
it that we'd be rehabbing and under what circumstances?
Yeah, so thank you. That's a perfect example of the type of conversations that you would have in developing an action plan.
Yeah, breaking it down and.
The other thing I'd like to say is, to speak to Art's point, is that one of the great things about developing an action plan is that it has a strong community engagement component, both internally and externally. And clearly, there are some communication issues with committees in the town, and I think that what I've noticed in other towns that have either switched to the new version of the trust or have established a new trust is that there are other groups in the town who, there's a shifting of priorities and a shifting of roles in the town, and it can be really helpful to facilitate a broader conversation with those groups to clarify roles and to work together more closely. And that's just the internal work. Externally, this is a really important opportunity to get input from your residents to find out what's important to them, so that will help guide your funding guidelines as well. And that way we are being really transparent and getting a lot of participation from the community in developing this plan, so it becomes the town's
There
plan.
was actually a pretty good turnout on that April 30th meeting, so.
right.
I was just thinking about it, and it wasn't overtly hostile, I mean, I thought
No,
it was pretty
no.
constructive.
But I'm actually going to vote with Andrea here, that it's well and good that that happened, and this may not be as sexy or exciting, but this is actually going to get us where we want to go. Is to create an action plan that everybody can agree on, break down turf lines, and come up with some sort of commonly agreed to strategy, so that when we actually go to the ZBA, it's not like a tug of war with these people have those constituencies and those people have those constituencies. That's why it was daunting. They just kept continuing the hearings because they kept coming up with a new bar to jump over. Like, what kind of trees are you putting in? I mean, it was all a surrogacy for, if we're going to kill it with time. And if you do this correctly, that largely goes away, and it's exposed for what it is, because you had an opportunity along the way to say anything reasonable.
Right.
So I'd like to see it agendaed
Yeah.
so that we can actually vote something.
So is the idea that we could, so now that accessory dwelling has passed, funds could be used if somebody had a space in their house that wanted to turn that space or something over a garage, whatever, into an accessory
Yeah, actually.
dwelling that would be
But what priority
identified?
that would enjoy is all
I know, I
about,
think
Okay.
all about this.
Okay, I
Who
just,
do we want to
Exactly.
encourage?
yeah.
Good point.
okay,
It is,
They
but
put
it
a lot
may
of
be
money
priority
into one
4 or
unit,
7, I don't know.
Yeah.
all right.
The other thing, it sounds like,
Yeah, and that's where the action plan is, because, you know, we could spend all our time rehabbing houses that desperately need it.
Yeah.
Maybe a percentage of that, maybe, but yes,
Yeah.
something that should be looked at. It's an opportunity we shouldn't turn down,
Mm-hmm.
great.
but
So-
it's not a priority.
Accessory apartments.
What would be a next step that would make sense for you as far as getting forward in the action plan? Can I offer you a timeline? Would you like to see a draft outline of the different sections? I have my own suggestions of how to go about it, but I'm curious what would be useful for you.
Yeah, because you actually pointed out something I know to be true, we've talked about. I mean, all this is great in a general sense, but what worked in Boston isn't necessarily working here. We still have an obligation to do something that is homegrown, but we're not reinventing the wheel anyway. So we got Grafton. If you
And
could,
to be
if you
clear-
could, you have enough knowledge at this point
Yeah.
here about
The
what you
Grafton
might.
one includes kind of the production of a housing production plan
Yeah.
in it. You already have that, so this isn't necessarily gonna be a carbon copy.
I'd like you to take a run at what you think now that
Okay.
you know for the time you spent here, culturally the town is up to, and knowing what Grafton and everybody else has done, marry them. You know, something that might make sense for us as a recommendation.
All right.
Give us something to react to.
Yeah, because we're not going to build the plan. It'll be ugly.
It sounds like Charlene may have already shared this information with you, but just to reiterate, because I think it's really important, we're having our summer quarterly peer group meetings. These are all housing related, right? So I would love to see you at our Lower Cape meeting. I'm passing this down. It's on June 13th for municipal officials and town staff. And then, of course, community engagement training that is on June 18th. This is an advanced training that's part of the Cape Housing Institute. And this has actually been created specifically for the Lower Cape because there are so many towns that are embarking on specific developments. So this is not a training about what is community engagement broadly. This is a training about actionable steps that towns can take when they are embarking on a development. It's a very specialized community engagement training. And I think it can really help prepare us for what the action plan process might look like. So I would encourage you, they're all free.
Oh, we're not getting the action plan done by next month?
Okay, so let me just say this out loud. The action plan
Is
is
it like
going
a
to take a
3-month?
while.
6 months?
I would say at least 6 months.
And it's a living document anyway, right? I
Well,
mean,
that's your choice. Yeah, if you choose to make it that. I think it should, a really high-functioning trust revisits their action plan every 1 to 3 years.
But right now, where we're at is I feel like we got the delivery of the lumber and somebody threw it on our front yard and we got no plan about how to use it.
You
That's
you
a
better
good way to
watch
put
it
it.
at night, because somebody's gonna steal it and build a house.
Yeah, well, there's that. But if we slog through at least something that we can use as a counterpoint, it would be very helpful.
Okay.
We may wanna, does, timing that with, Laura being here, would she be able to provide some good insight, or?
You
is
know,
that-
Laura works a lot more on development and the pre-development phase of things. Shelley Gehring is the trust person at MHP, and I am definitely planning on engaging her in developing the action plan.
Good to have that resource, I think, you know, if
Yeah,
they're
let
willing
me
to
talk to her
attend
and
have a
see
discussion with us.
what she can commit to.
I mean, because you could look at the 4 or 5 parcels that we have, and if a couple jump out, say for example, Oak Street and Willow Street jump out, give us an action plan next month. Tell us what we can start going on.
Okay.
I mean, don't wait till September,
we
Yeah,
can
no,
have two.
exactly.
We can
you know,
have-
because, you know, this is coming up in the
Do we wanna
building
do
season.
two
when it
we
gets
can walk and
warm.
chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, and I don't
I
want you,
think so.
I don't want this to come off like you're doing a PhD thesis either, but I have to throw one more thing into
What?
this. It would be extraordinarily helpful if we got the inventory based on what baggage does each parcel come with.
Oh, yeah,
Is there something that we need to jump over as a hurdle?
right.
It could
No,
be
exactly.
environmental, it could be title, it could be, what,
If there's a 3-toed toad out there, tell us.
yeah, well, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
but my point is that prioritizing the land is one thing. What do we have to do to be able to actually do something on it is another. I mean, what baggage does each property have? That's why it's really appealing to do
Quick
Oak
wins.
Street right now,
Must be
because
some software
I
out
don't
there, right?
see that many impediments.
does
We
this
had the golf
already?
people in, and that was one of them.
I
I mean,
but-
or
Yep.
some
Not only what they are, but
category.
what's wrong with
Yeah,
them?
just so
What,
you can,
what do we have to get
so you're not
past?
reinventing the wheel.
I mean, we do
And
this all the
I-
time.
You know, just pick out a townhouse design that staggers a half a dozen townhouses or.
Well, I think it
or-
makes
There's a
sense
lot of
too,
examples
if
out
we
there.
could get a sense for, you know, do we wanna, is Habitat kind of the target market for, you know, this type of property? You know, do we, and not to name
Not unless we're
specific-
doing freestanding houses, because that's their model. I mean, they go out, plump, 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 and they don't do rentals.
No, so,
It's all home ownership. There's an
Yep.
actual basis for that in their bylaws about the dignity of mankind being tied up with owning property
'Cause I just,
and
whatever,
building it to have some equity in it.
if we do an invitation for bid or an RFP, I mean, I just wanna make sure we have people
Well,
respond to it.
there are
you know,
people,
in
I've said
terms of-
that. I mean, there's organizations, CDP, HAC, HESH. I mean, there's a lot of people can do stuff.
Yep.
And there are a lot of examples of those townhouses that don't look like East Hampton. There's stuff in Truro. I think you guys
Highland, well, that's their,
built
that's-
some of
Oh,
that.
yeah, those
But I
were
mean, there's some
Yes.
architectural examples that are
Yeah.
even more attractive than what they did, that we
you
could
know,
do.
And
if
even
you
the
all
ones in
have
Harwich
time,
were nice
Truro,
that are-
Yeah,
is-
Sisson
here.
Road.
Truro is doing a housing forum on their Cloverleaf project tonight at 6 o'clock,
Oh,
and they're talking
Oh,
about their
tonight.
implementation table and design. I'm planning on going, that might be,
do you know if they'll
Helpful.
record it, do you think?
I don't know, I would imagine they would, but I don't know. And they've
Just
already picked a
on-
developer.
On that point, I know Eastham, I got an email or something that they're gonna do a walkthrough of the development that he showed. I wanna say it's June 3rd, so I just got something, I think
Oh.
came in today. I was out of the office at, kind of training for procurement the last 2 days. But I'll try to forward that on to people, and I think, you know, it'd be nice to, if they do a more Cape-wide to show people what they're doing, it'd be nice to go on a tour of that. I thought the one in Yarmouth was helpful on the
It was.
internal hallway issue versus the door. I mean, that kind of was.
A lot of people are moving
Interesting.
away from that internal thing anyway. I go to the hospital district in Boston, they've got a whole ton of row houses that have single doors that are affordable houses. And they
Yep.
look really nice. They look
Yes.
really nice.
right behind Brigham's.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of things that you can do. But I do know, because having been born in Yonkers as I was, I can tell you that argument's been going on for a long time, because the common doorway to a number of units thing breaks down when you start talking about crime and other things, because it becomes so self-contained. The concern is, well, how are we going to deal with that? And once it's built, it's kind of baked in the cake. It is what it is. There's a lot of appeal to the, I've seen less blowback through the years on these townhouses and row houses than I have on, like,
The apartment.
our next
type
door
structures.
neighbors here. I mean, that would be the model for the other way of doing it.
So let's pick the right site and make the really good RFP so that developers are jumping on this with beautiful designs.
And our first comment is going to be, this is a Harwich solution, because everybody seems to want to feel that.
Yeah, what we don't want is the RFP going out the 1st of October so we can have winter construction.
Yep, there was that.
Well, the good thing about going to get recertified on the procurement is, access to hopefully latest stuff, so they have a lot more stuff on the websites on the state agencies than they've had in the past, which is good. All set on your report?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other business? It's coming up on 4 o'clock, so we're at 2-hour mark.
Real quick report from the Historic Commission last night.
Yeah.
The Harwich Junior Theater came before us for putting a permanent sign up at 265 Sisson, which is now transferred to us. And they were gonna put the sign right at the edge of the parking lot, not in front of the building. There was some reservation about, we're gonna meet again on it, on placement of the sign. Does anyone have any reservations about location?
The other end of the parking lot, or?
It's not, if you're coming, if you're leaving the police station coming up, there's 2 entrances into that lot.
Yeah,
It's after the second one before the 3 trees. It's kind of where they have the sign now,
where
but
the crosswalk is almost?
pretty much so, yeah.
So wait a minute, Harwich Junior Theater, as you're coming up from the police, and where do they want to have the sign?
They want to have it on the right-hand side, not in
How
front of,
close to the building?
it's not close to the building.
It's like a little island in the parking lot. where-
Correct, yeah.
Along the road.
Shouldn't they have it closer to the building?
I think Chris is gonna meet you, so it's kind of, this is where the sign is, here's one entrance, here's another entrance.
Mm-hmm.
So they're putting in, there's like one tree, there's a tree issue in the way.
Oh, so people
Right
can't see it.
behind the trees would be perfect.
Well, if we put it here, then, so, I mean, it was something that came up, I mean, I know
Did I mention we need to have companion stakeholders show up
Chris is
here?
gonna meet with you again about.
It's frightening that they're worried about how many feet away from the building
Okay.
this sign is when we're gonna be building something behind the building. We
Okay.
might wanna have them in
Is
as,
that why
as
they're?
guests.
But it's gonna be a sign that can be.
Yeah, anytime,
Can be
all
removed, yeah.
stakeholders should always be involved.
I'm
But he
just
should-
saying,
He wanted to talk to you about something.
Okay.
And we're gonna meet again next week.
we should have the historical commission come in too to have a howdy-do. If they're worried about how many feet from the building, we're building something behind the building.
I was just thinking that. I don't have a side to
Just
We
put
go
the
might
to
housing
want, we
right
might
there.
want them to understand what we're trying to do up front so that we don't get caught on
Well, yeah, it's gotta be a.
what style shingle we're using on the buildings first. And if they're gonna be
Well,
adamant, we might
that's-
wanna know.
Yeah.
So
I
why
was
don't
just
we
gonna say, on
invite
a
them to?
safety thing, just because I live on Sisson,
Yeah, well, there's
I,
that.
I don't know how it fits into what you guys need to do, but I would put it on that green in front of the handicap entrance.
That's where I suggested it, but
Because
it's a
it's.
visual, you can't see it when you're coming down.
And Brenda, before you get to it,
Oh,
before you
but
get too
visually-
down the road on this,
Yeah,
we may have had that land voted to us, but they operate off of a lease that was granted by the Board of
They
Selectmen.
only lease the building.
Yeah, except that that's the point. They haven't ever told
They
the
have no
Board of
control over
Selectmen.
anything about the building.
Yeah, but they hadn't said anything to the Board of Selectmen about what sign they wanted to put somewhere, which is an impertinence to their use of the building.
well, they're probably getting approval first from
Well,
the
any way you want.
Historic Society before they even approach.
billboard.
No,
A
they're ready to
billboard.
go. They
You
wanna
said it, not
have
me.
that sign put up.
Why don't they put it on the
Okay,
side of
okay.
the building?
I was gonna say.
There was
on the side.
pushback on that a couple of years ago, so they
Oh,
decided
'cause
not
they
to.
could make a really nice wooden,
Yeah, I didn't, I try not to
Ideas
suggest
coming.
what someone
Yeah.
should do, but let them come forward with the information, and we approve it from there, but
But all joking aside, we really need to have a companion conversation because that land, talking about a priority list that has,
well, they must have.
what
had
baggage does this property have coming with it?
I'm sure they
This
know
property
that-
has
that-
a historic district
Yeah.
coming with it, is what it has.
Right,
Oh, we
no.
could make historic district looking condos,
Oh,
you know?
we probably want to know before we get too far down our own priorities, what it is they might actually be saying, well, we're expecting if we ever get this project in front of us that it has. And while they don't have direct jurisdiction, they sure as heck could show up at a ZBA meeting.
And be
well, that's in the district,
agitated.
so we could.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
that's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, of course, the trust
Okay.
wants to do a project that works for as many people as
Everybody.
possible.
Yeah,
May I
think
just
it'd
say
be a
one
great
last-
opportunity to do some really cool.
May I say one last thing, Chris?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just now that Lower Cape Town meeting season is over, in case you didn't know, housing did really well on the Lower Cape, and over $8.6 million in funding were approved among Lower Cape towns.
That's
And all the housing articles passed, including all the ADU bylaws. So It's very
That was-
exciting.
It
Yeah.
was huge,
Right.
yeah.
And Don's gonna
Good
put a
work, you
reality check into
guys.
that, saying that my litmus test is always when I can knock on the door and see somebody living in one of them.
Well, let's be a part of that.
That's all I care
Obvious.
about.
January.
That's all I care about, is when I knock
Oh,
on the
get
door,
shovels
is
for
there
that money,
somebody
Don.
living in it.
Money comes first.
I get it.
Okay, motion to,
So moved.
Adjourn.
Move we adjourn. Brendan seconds.
Seconds.
What was that?
we're gonna do Larry and
Larry second.
Judith actually,
Oh,
is what
yeah,
I- who I
sure.
heard. As a
Did ya?
second.
Okay, yes.
All
I
in
will
favor,
second.
aye.
That's okay,
He's our
Brendan.
resident rogue and scoundrel, we love him.